I was living in an animal shelter because my husband had been fired from his job. That night, I was picking out a new t-shirt, and the one who changed everything came into my dressing room, and everyone turned their backs on me. My name is Camille. I'm 41 years old, and just a few years ago, I had what most people would call a stable life. Not extravagant, not flashy, but steady, predictable. I was married to Mark for over 17 years. We had one son, Evan. We lived in a modest one-story home on a quiet cul-de-sac outside of Denver. Our walls were a soft beige, our curtains were always just slightly crooked, and the lawn stayed neat because Mark took pride in trimming it himself. He worked in office equipment sales, fax machines, printers, toner supplies, the kind of job nobody dreams of as a child, but one that paid the bills. And I worked part-time at a veterinary clinic as a receptionist. I liked animals. I liked routine. And I liked my life. We weren't rich. We didn't go on big vacations or drive expensive cars. But we had a rhythm. Taco nights on Tuesdays. Movie night on Fridays. Mark brought home flowers every few months, not because he had to, but because he liked the way I smiled when he did. We had a savings account that slowly grew, and a son who was polite, hardworking, and, at the time, just starting to look at colleges. And then, in what felt like a blink, the ground shifted beneath us. Mark lost his job. They called it a departmental restructure. Just like that, after 15 years, he was out. No warning. Just a final paycheck, a boxed-up desk, and a tightness in his jaw that never quite went away. At first, we both tried to stay positive. I picked up more hours at the vet clinic. Mark applied to everything. Sales jobs, tech jobs, delivery routes, but nothing came back. Or when it did, the pay was insultingly low or the hours impossible. He took a few temp gigs, but nothing stuck. Weeks turned into months. Our savings drained faster than we imagined. The tension settled in our house like dust that no one could clean. Our mortgage fell behind. Credit cards maxed out. We sold Mark's car, then canceled cable, then stopped buying anything that wasn't absolutely necessary. Evan started staying late at school, picking up part-time work where he could. He didn't complain, but I could see the disappointment behind his eyes, like he had grown up overnight. Then came the hardest decision. A local animal shelter where I used to volunteer offered overnight shifts, cleaning, feeding, prepping meds. It didn't pay much, but they had a spare room with a cot and a tiny bathroom. They said I could sleep there during the week if I wanted. I took it. It was meant to help us save on utilities, to give Mark space to think, to job hunt. We told ourselves it was temporary. But temporary things have a way of stretching, of becoming normal. I started living there 5 nights a week. I'd come home on Sundays with tired eyes and the scent of bleach in my hair. The house always felt colder than I remembered. The silence between Mark and me had grown thick. We weren't fighting, but we also weren't reaching for each other anymore. We were two people walking the same path in different directions. And slowly, something in me started to disappear. I stopped wearing makeup, stopped brushing my hair some mornings. I wore the same 2 shirts, both stained and stretched, and I stopped caring when people looked at me sideways in public. But one morning, after working a 14-hour shift that started with a flood in the kennels and ended with putting down a dog whose owner never showed up, I found myself walking past a discount clothing store. My feet ached. My back hurt. But I stopped. I don't know why. Maybe it was the way the mannequins looked so clean in the window. Maybe I just wanted to feel like a woman again, not a ghost in scrubs. I walked in. The store was nearly empty. The kind of place where the lights hum a little too loudly and the fitting room mirrors show you every angle you don't want to see. I didn't have the money to buy anything, but I picked out a soft gray t-shirt from the clearance rack. Simple, clean, no holes. And I made my way to the dressing rooms in the back. The curtain was thin, barely wide enough to give real privacy. I stepped in, pulled it closed, and stared at myself. My hair was tied back with a rubber band. My jeans sagged at the knees. But the shirt was soft. It didn't smell like bleach. It didn't belong to anyone else before me. I slipped it over my head. For the first time in weeks, I took a breath that didn't hurt. And then, the curtain opened. I gasped. My hands shot to the fabric across my chest. I turned, startled, and locked eyes with him. He froze, hand still holding the edge of the curtain. His mouth parted slightly, like he was about to speak, but thought better of it. He wasn't a teenager, maybe late 30s. Tall, broad shoulders, rough hands paint-stained. A quiet kind of intensity in the way he stood, like he wasn't used to explaining himself. "I'm sorry," he said finally. I thought it was empty. But for a moment, just one beat too long, he didn't move. His eyes didn't dart around the room, didn't drop in embarrassment. They held mine. Steady. Still. And in that pause, something unspoken passed between us. Not desire. Not shock. Just recognition. Then he nodded once, gently pulled the curtain shut, and walked away. I stood there, the soft shirt against my skin, my heart thudding in my chest, my breath shallow. What just happened? Why couldn't I move? It took me several minutes to step out of the dressing room. I didn't even buy the shirt. I left it hanging there, still warm from my skin. When I walked back into the daylight, the world felt different. Tilted. Not in a terrifying way. Just shifted. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know why that moment lingered in my chest like something unfinished. But I knew this. Everything that came after would start with that curtain. I couldn't stop thinking about his eyes. Not because they lingered on my body, they didn't, but because they held mine like he knew something I didn't. Something I hadn't remembered about myself in years. I went back to the shelter that evening, as always. Washed out food bowls. Changed bandages. Laughed softly at a lab mix who chewed through her third blanket. The rhythm of the work calmed me. But underneath it all, I kept seeing the dressing room curtain. The way it swayed after he pulled it shut. The moment that felt like a line being drawn, somewhere deep inside me. His name was Vincent. I found out 2 days later when he walked into the shelter like nothing had happened. He brought towels. Good ones. Soft, expensive. Said he owned a few properties, did renovations, and liked donating to places that did something real. That's what he called it, real. He didn't mention the store. Neither did I. But when our eyes met, something passed again. Recognition. Memory. That same quiet wait. He kept coming back. Once a week, then twice. Then almost daily. Always with something in his hands, a leash, a box, fresh coffee, papers to sign. Always calm. Always kind. Never pushy. But never distant. Most people just drop off donations, I said once. They don't come back. I don't like unfinished things, he replied. Especially ones that stay with me. That night, I couldn't sleep. Weeks passed. Mark was still home. Still scraping together hours at odd jobs. Still weary. Still trying, in his own quiet, defeated way. We didn't argue. We just stopped reaching. Vincent started texting. Brief things. A photo of a dog. A new kitchen counter he installed. A sunrise he said looked too expensive to ignore. And then, one evening after helping unload donations, he said, "I'm flying out Thursday. Santa Barbara. I just finished a house there. Ocean view. Pool. No one's living in it yet." I looked at him. Sounds peaceful. It is, he said. Would be more with company. I laughed nervously. You're inviting me? I'm offering you air, he said. And time. And silence. I'm not asking for anything. Just come see it. Clear your head. One seat. One day to decide. I didn't respond. But that night, lying next to a man who hadn't asked me how I was in over a year, I read Vincent's message over and over again. The next morning, I left before sunrise. Told Mark I picked up extra hours. He didn't question it. At the airport, Vincent waited near the gate. A coffee in his hand, a quiet look in his eyes. "You came," he said. I did. But what I didn't know was that Mark had seen my messages. He'd scrolled through them while I slept. He'd followed me that morning, all the way to the airport. Just as we were boarding, I heard my name. Camille. I turned. Mark was there, out of breath, eyes wide, pleading. I froze. So did Vincent. But then the gate agent called our group. Vincent took a step forward. And I followed. Mark didn't chase me. He just stood there, watching. When the wheels lifted from the ground, I felt like I had too. The house was beautiful, unreal. Walls of glass. A pool so still it looked like a mirror. Vincent poured wine, showed me the sunset, said, "You needed this more than anyone I've ever met." And for a while, I believed him. At first, he gave me space. A separate room. Quiet. He gave me a room. Gave me space. Gave me silence. He bought me dresses. Made coffee. Took me to dinners where no one looked at price tags. I texted Evan. Once. He never responded. I didn't reach out to Mark again. Then, after about a month, Vincent changed. He traveled more. Came home later. One night, he forgot my name when calling from a loud bar. He laughed it off, but something cracked. 2 weeks later, I saw it. A post on social media. Vincent. In Palm Springs. With someone else. Younger. Perfect. Effortless. I said nothing when he returned. But he didn't lie. Didn't deny. I didn't promise forever, he said. He let me stay in the house. Said I could figure out what came next. But he stopped calling. Stopped coming back. Now I sit alone by the pool. The water is warm. The view is breathtaking. The silence is unbearable. I left a husband who still made coffee every morning. I left a son who needed me more than he knew how to say. And I followed a man who said I looked like someone worth saving. But in the end, he saved a better version of me and left me behind.